Hello everyone, Andrew Martin here, and welcome to my BCM Game of the Month for November 2013. And of course this month promises to be a memorable one for chess players and chess lovers all over the world, as it features the 2013 World Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Viswanathan Anand. So just to celebrate this upcoming match, I've chosen one of the last important games that these two played together. And this game comes from the Grand Slam final played in October 2012, where Carlsen had the white pieces. Well, Carlsen kicked off with e4. And one of the main aspects of Carlsen's style is his seeming ability to play all positions. It's going to be difficult for Anand to out-prepare him in this match because you never quite know what he's going to play. Here, against Anand's Sicilian defence, he sticks with a very solid continuation, bishop b5 check, avoiding the theoretical complications of the Najdorf. Black responded with the solid bishop d7, which is probably the best move, and now Carlsen takes off the bishop. Black recaptures with the queen. That might seem like a slightly surprising recapture. It looks more natural to take back with the knight, but Black is arguing that the knight belongs on c6, which gives him some control over d4. And now Carlsen plays the move which is the only real test of the black setup, c4. This is a very solid move. It's a very good move. White erects the Maroczy bind. The two pawns on e4 and c4 clamp down on Black's position and make it difficult for Black to cast off the shackles with freeing pawn breaks. Against that, this is a rather slow way of proceeding, and Black must look to first develop and then organise some pawn breaks for himself. The pawn breaks in question are either a6 and then b5, or somehow, and this is slightly more difficult, to arrange the move d5. If Black can play either of those moves at the right moment, then he tends to get a good game. But that's a long way off, and Anand starts with knight to f6, just getting his kingside pieces out. Black can also play knight to c6 in this position. Those moves are roughly equivalent. White protects his pawn, and now Anand just sets up a dragon formation with g6. White pushes forward in the centre. These moves are all well known. Black chops off. White recaptures with the knight, and Black plays bishop g7. There are a few move order tweaks in this variation where Black plays knight c6 first, but they don't really come to much. And now Carlsen sets up his bind formation with f3. h3 has also been played in this position, but I think you'll agree f3 is very natural. Queen to c7. Well, at the time this game was played, this was not a particularly common move in this position. Of course, Black's attacking c4. Just dropping back, Black usually castles, a very natural move. White goes bishop e3, and then battle is joined after knight c6, castles, and then a6. This is a much more common way to handle this particular variation. But the idea of queen c7 is to force White to play b3, and then Black brings his queen out to a5, which puts a little bit of pressure, immediate pressure, on the White position. And one of the ideas is to force White to commit his bishop on c1 to b2. Usually White puts the bishop on e3 and follows up with queen to d2. Well, here White feels obliged to play bishop b2. The problem with bishop d2 is it's not really the best square for this bishop in this particular formation, and then Black can continue with knight c6 in improved circumstances. Obviously White can play a move like knight d5 here, but does it really come to much? Black retreats with queen to d8, bishop comes to c3, and now e6 initiates exchanges. Obviously White can take off all the pieces in this position, something like this, but as the Black queen's attacking the rook on a1, he's got no time for queen takes d6, and after castles rook d8, this looks pretty equal. Obviously Black does have a pawn weakness in this position. But it's not out of the question that he may play d5 sooner rather than later. So that is Anand's clever idea. Carlsen has to fall in. White plays bishop b2. And now black gets on with development. He plays knight c6. Both sides castle. Knight c to e2. So my impression is that Anand has played the opening very accurately indeed. He's out-prepared Carlsen to an extent. And now white has to try to find moves which keep the game going. One of the great things about Carlsen is that he's quite happy to play on and on and on in the search of a win. So with knight ce2, white is avoiding too much simplification and keeps the game complicated. Rook fd8. A mysterious looking move at first sight. At second sight, black is planning e6 and then the freeing break d5, after which the rook will be in exactly the right place. The only drawback of the rook move is that it takes away a retreat square from the black queen. So Carlsen starts to hassle the queen by playing bishop c3. Queen drops back to b6, pinning the knight. Carlsen doesn't like that. He moves the king into the corner. And now a really excellent move from Viswanathan. Pawn up to d5. A move that seems impossible, but when we come to analyse it, is very possible indeed. So, why isn't white just winning a pawn here? Well, let's just see. Let's say white takes the pawn with the e-pawn. Okay, knight takes d5. Incidentally, if he takes with the c-pawn, I don't think it makes much difference. Black would play knight takes d5 anyway in that instance. It comes back to the same position. And now black's point, he's going to take on d5 with the rook. And this pin on the knight at d4 is very, very awkward for white to have to deal with. White's probably got to unpin here, and then we get the variation, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, all the pieces come off on d4, and clearly after queen takes e7, rook a d8, only black can be better in this position. He's got both rooks in play, materials level, yes, but black is getting ready to penetrate to the second rank with rook d2. So that is the point, going back to the game itself, of Anand's excellent move, d5. To me, this kind of pinpoints the slowness of white's opening system. In this system, if white's allowed to sit down on the position and just unhurriedly build up, then he must have a slight edge. But if black develops pointedly, as Anand has done here, and then he can break with one of his d5 or b5 ideas, then clearly this is nothing for white. But as I say, Carlsen keeps the game going. He plays knight takes c6. B takes c6. Queen to e1. So queen to e1 sets up the immediate idea as marked of bishop a5. Very good. It's in some instances as well, white can move the queen out to h4. So black plays rook d to c8. But this looks like a bit of a concession to me. Why doesn't black play a5 in this position? It looks natural. Expanding on the queen side brings the rook on a8 into the game. Perhaps Anand was afraid of e5, but then black can just drop back his knight either to d7, or if he doesn't like the move e6 after that, he can even go to e8. I don't see too much hope of an advantage for white in this position. Obviously he can take on d5, he can play bishop d4, something like this. But now f4 gives black plenty of counterplay on the queen side. So perhaps Anand should have played this way. Well, back to the game. Black played rook d c8. White pushed on in the centre. As I say, that's the only chance really to mix things up. And Anand drops his knight back to e8. Once again, knight d7 comes into consideration. And once again, e6 is the worry with this move. But after knight e8 as played, Carlsen was also able to play e6 in this particular circumstance. And now he's going for a direct attack against the black queen side, king side. And this is logical, as we see all the black major pieces on the queen side. It's going to take them a while to come across to the king's defence. Well, Anand snaps the pawn off, and now Carlsen moves in with knight f4. I mean, clearly he can take on g7, but that only assists black's defence. Bishop takes g7, knight takes g7. The knight's very useful on g7. Why should white encourage black to play his piece to a better square? So knight f4 was played, Anand took on c3. White recaptured with the queen. Black blocked the queen out with d4. Carlsen moves his queen back to d2. So this continuation, the way the game's gone, shows that actually Carlsen is willing to take some risks in a game to play for a win. He sacked this pawn. It's not totally clear. Obviously white's got better coordination after c5, rook a, e1. But, well, black should be able to defend, as we will see. Knight g7. Of course, the problem for black is communication in his position. You know, these double pawns, whilst one of those pawns is extra for black, it makes it difficult for black to bring the major pieces across to support his king. And this is the motivation behind Anand's next move coming up. First of all, white plays g4, very good, restraining the black knight. Now Anand plays rook to c6. He's trying to hold that pawn on e6, but c6 is a slightly clumsy square for the rook. What was better? Well, maybe queen to d6 was a better idea, with the idea that after rook e4, black's going to go for counterplay on the queen side with a5 and then defend with rook f8. To me, f8 looks like a better square for the rook on c8 than c6. The rook's doing more on f8. Of course, in this line, black obviously has to brave knight takes e6, but then we could go rook takes f3. And I don't see too many terrors after takes on g7, takes on e7, and then rook f7 for black to face. For instance, after queen g5, he can play rook a7, another benefit of a5. So I think Anand could have defended this position. It seems like he's getting rather nervous about the prospect of being attacked directly by Carlsen. He puts his rook on a slightly clumsy square, rook c6. And now Carlsen starts to go up a few gears. Knight h3. The idea of that is very simple and very brutal. White wants to play queen h6 and then knight g5. So Anand hurries with his knight to f6. Knight g5. Now all white has to do is to get that knight on f6 out of the way. And around here, my impression is that Anand was starting to feel extremely uncomfortable as he plays another slightly inaccurate move here, d3. Well, was there better? Let's go back. I think queen a6 might be better. That's a rather obscure looking move at first sight. It seems as though black wants to come in and take the pawn, but in reality the point of this move is to make the square c8 available so the queen can slide across to f8 and join the defence. Okay, white's definitely better in this position. He can keep the queens on with queen h3, or he can even trade on f8 and then take on e6. Something like this. I mean, white's clearly better here. He's got black pinned down on the e file. The e7 pawn's weak. White's knight's about to come to the beautiful square d3. White is certainly putting the pressure really on in this position. But d3, going back to the game itself, well, this makes life easy for white. In comes Carlsen with rook e5. A very good move, jamming up the black pawns, making it difficult for the rook on c6 and the queen on b6 to communicate with the king side. And now I think, however Anand plays here, he's going to have serious problems. In the game, he went king h8. What else was there? Well, he could try and get his queen back to the defence with queen d8, but then I think we just take on e6. And if black tries takes d2, this is easily met by rook d1, queen d3, and then queen e3. It's so much easier for white to manoeuvre his pieces around the board than black. Obviously, black is losing. So I think black really has some problems. Let's try one last move, rook d8, getting in behind the d pawn. Now white can demolish the black king side with knight takes h6. Very good indeed. If black takes, we go takes on g6. And if he goes king h8, it's all very simple. Rook h5 finishes the job. And if king f8, we go queen takes h7, d2, queen h8 check, king f7, queen h5 check, king f8, and now rook to d1. But white's threatening queen g6 and rook g5. Meanwhile, black has no real way of exploiting his pawn on d2. But in the game, well, back to rook e5. King h8 was played by Anand. Carlsen played rook d1. And now Anand resigned. The problem is, well, no, I actually didn't. One more move, excuse me. Queen a6 and now a4. Black resigned. The problem is that black has no moves. White's threatening just to take the pawn on d3. And after that, of course, if black plays rook to d8 in this position, well, I think we can just take on d3 anyway, sacrificing the rook. And then we've got this beautiful mate with the knight coming in. So it's hard to find moves. If black plays queen to c8, rook takes d3, queen to g8, well then rook d e3. This is a slow death. White can take off the black pawns at will. So after playing the opening extremely well, as soon as Carlsen got the attack in that game, it seemed to me that Anand went downhill. He'll be hoping he plays much better than that in Chennai. So just to sum up, who do I think is favourite for the World Championship match? Well, let's try and break it down. I think the venue must favour Anand. The fact that it's in Chennai, the groundswell of support for him will be coming in his direction throughout the match. Magnus will feel outgunned in terms of support. In terms of the length of the match, well, it's only a 12-game match, and again, I think this must favour Anand to a degree. Anand's got tremendous experience at this level, at the highest level. The longer the match goes on, the more the fact that he's older than Carlsen is going to come to the fore. He can cope with a 12-game match. What about a punishing 24-game match? Well, as we know, the World Championship matches are becoming shorter and shorter as time goes by. This must favour the older man to a degree. And finally, the fact that if it's 6-all, the match is going to be decided with a quick play finish. Well, I'm not sure who that favours. You know, a lot of people make great hay about Anand's skill in quick play finishes. Well, we've only got to recall the Gelfand match last year to see how good he is at this discipline of the game. Well, Carlsen's extremely good at that too. So I consider the chances to be balanced if it comes down to a quick play finish. So far, everything seems to be working in Anand's favour. Against that preparation, who's going to have the better prepared team? Well, again, we look at experience, the Anand experience, but let's not forget that Carlsen, the news is that Carlsen's been consulting Kasparov. I think in terms of preparation, you know, probably Carlsen has the edge in this match, contrary to popular opinion. And certainly in terms of variety of opening choices, you know, Anand's going to be racking his brains trying to work out what Carlsen is going to do in this match. He can literally hit from anywhere with any first move, any system, with either colour. So I think it's going to be difficult for Anand to out-prepare Carlsen in this particular match. Recent form, well, that's all moving in Carlsen's direction. I mean, he's been playing fantastically, as we all know, over the last few years, and he seems to be bringing himself up to a peak for this particular match. So in terms of form, watch out Anand in this match. What else? Well, I think Carlsen's going to be setting his stall out to play long games in this match. I think despite the fact that the match is 12 games long, he's going to be trying to tire Anand out with a lot of punishing games. So I think Anand's best chance is to try and land some sort of theoretical punch early on. If he can get ahead in the match, then he can make life really difficult for Carlsen to peg it back over 12 games. If Carlsen gets ahead early, I really do fear for Anand's safety. So I think the early part of this match is going to be really interesting to see who can nudge ahead. The longer the match goes on, funnily enough, the more I favour Anand as he's angling, getting towards those quick play finishes. Carlsen's going to get a bit nervous. Who do I think is going to win? Well, I think Magnus is going to win. But I don't think it's going to be as conclusive as people suggest. I think it's going to be a very tight match. Vishy's going to put up a tremendous fight, but in the end, I think Magnus' youth will prevail in this particular example. Well, the chess world awaits with bated breath for the start of this match, and I know I'm certainly looking forward to it. I hope you enjoyed that brief preview. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to the pleasure of your company next month.